Here's 5 reasons why Jon Jones is the greatest of all time. Jon is the youngest ever champion, winning the light heavyweight belt when he was only 23 years and 8 months old. Statistically, we see male champions winning their first title at 29 years, 4 months on average. So Jon winning it at only 23 gave him more time to accumulate these next few stats. I don't know if anyone is ever going to break this record. We have Muhammad Mokaev, who could potentially beat it. He is about to be 24 here soon, so I don't think he's going to be able to touch it. But we do have Raul Rosas, who, is pretty competitive in the division. He's only 19 years old right now. He's looked pretty good in his last 2 fights, but he has had trouble making weight for this weight class in the past. So as he ages, I think that's going to be a little bit more difficult for him to do. So, he still has potentially 3.5, 4 years to beat Jon's record. We'll see what happens with Raul Rosas in the future. He also leads the UFC with the most title fight victories of all time with 15. In any good GOAT debate, rings are a huge factor, and Jon has a decisive lead above everyone else in this category. So when you're making the pro bones GOAT argument, I really think this is kind of the biggest talking point. I mean, he has cemented himself as, the leader in this category, which is probably the most important category, especially when we're taking into term, longevity of run. And he has people beat like GSP, Nunez, Anderson Silva, Demetrius Johnson. He has these people beat by a pretty significant margin. And he's doing it at 205, which, as we know, as the guys get bigger and as the weight class increases, people are getting knocked out much easier and much more frequently. So to be able to do that at 205, to me, even ups the significance of this particular stat. He also holds the record for the longest unbeaten streak in the UFC with 19 and an overall record of 27-1. And we all know that DQ loss was bull. And I know of all the talking points, this one's probably going to get some pushback, and people are going to mention, the Dom Reyes fight, or the Gus 2 fight that were extremely close. And in some cases, people think that Jon lost those. But I do want to mention, GSP had the Johnny Hendricks fight. Also, GSP lost to Matt Serra. So when you're talking about GOATs, this is not necessarily, an example that hasn't happened before. There's other times where this has happened where people were either in extremely close fights, Khabib and Gleison Tibau, extremely close fights and won. I don't necessarily think that this should be a con or a negative when you're talking about the GOATs. And he recently won the heavyweight belt, making him a 2-division champion, a feat that only 9 people have ever done in the UFC. He also ran the light heavyweight division for 9 years straight. It's funny to me how quickly the 2 weight class champ is becoming a thing. I mean, we're seeing people kind of go up and down and get these belts way more common than we used to. We just saw Poatan do it at 185 and 205. We saw Jon finally move up after all that weight to heavyweight and become a 2 weight class champion as well. So my thought process is, in the next 20 years, is this going to be like a common thing? Is this going to be a thing that the people that are in the GOAT talk or that are in the fringe top 5 talks, is this going to be like a mandatory prerequisite for them to be up there? And, if it is, then Jon has pretty much cemented himself and future-proofed his legacy by getting that 2 weight class champion status. Also, are we going to see a 3 weight class champ? And how crazy is that going to be? I would have said in the past, no way anyone is going to be able to do that, just because usually the frame is so far off between the 3 weight classes. But to see how Poatan was able to cut to 185, look pretty natural at 205, and if he bulks a little bit, the frame is big enough to also, I think, succeed at the heavyweight ranking at the 265 limit, depending on who the matchup is. So that is just insane, and I think the future is going to be filled with 2-division champions. And the pedigree. Jon has beat the best of the best throughout his career, including 2 wins over another top 15 guy ever in Daniel Cormier. His strength of schedule is absolutely insane. I mean, he came in with a division full of OGs, full of legends. You've got Shogun Rua, Rampage, Machida, Vitor Belfort, DC, Chael Sonnen. I mean, the list goes on. And he came out on top over all of these guys every single time. Now, that is a testament to, who he is as a fighter and who he is as an athlete. And in order to be the GOAT, you have to have some amazing names on your resume. And I do think this is, another huge point as to why Jon Jones is the greatest of all time. Not to mention he has some absolutely savage highlight victories over these people. I mean, the walk-off submission over Machida. You have the absolute cranking Americana
Ouch.
over legends. And, you know, he just has some great finishes over extremely high level fighters. And that's another reason why I think Jon Jones is the GOAT. Hey, thanks for watching this video. Go ahead and check out one of these other videos if you enjoyed this one. And I think there's a subscribe clickable button up here. If you enjoy UFC cards, you'll enjoy this channel. Thanks for stopping by.